When I was younger, I was getting high on my identity of being a victim, and I got high on drugs. And then I got sober, and I switched over to getting high on this new identity of this sober person, this person who's a composer and who helps people and all that. It was just a transference of ego.
Hey everybody, it's Raghu back with Mindrolling, and Jaymee Carpenter is my guest today. And our claim to fame collectively is that we live in Ojai.
It's true.
And we became friends, so we're kind of happy to do this. I actually did one with Jaymee, who does podcasts. Love is the Author is a wonderful podcast that he does.
Thank you.
As well as you've done soundtracks, music. I didn't know so much about that, except suddenly he's became my drummer when I sing kirtan at our community events.
Yeah, definitely. I'm starting to take liberties because we've been playing long enough. I'm starting to take artistic liberties.
Yeah. Suddenly I've got Art Blakey.
Oh, wow. That's a huge compliment. Thank you.
Yeah, really. That's a name from the past.
Definitely.
And you also, you do consulting with people to help get them straightened out on a day-to-day basis, shall we say? Right?
Sure. Yeah, no, definitely. It's been a long road. It's, it's that you and I are even friends is extraordinary for my path because right after I took a huge plunge into non-identity about 10 years ago.
Wait, what was that? You did what?
I took a huge...
Is that something you took?
No.
We want it.
Yeah, this time it wasn't. It was all, I think, it was all of what I'd taken my whole life. What I'd accumulated was an identity. I had been somebody who in childhood struggled emotionally, struggled with, I had sexual abuse in my childhood. And these things, I felt like a victim, of my own story. And I decided at one point in my youth that I was going to be anyone other than me because it hurt too much to be me. And so I started lying about everything, really, in life. I think it was my first drug, was lying. That's what I say.
Yeah, this is not uncommon, of course.
Right. Yeah.
This is to one degree or another. Yeah.
Yeah, I found that this...
Continue. What happened?
Well, I found that this Jaymee character... there was a lot of things that happened in my life that no one came and sort of said, hey, this is what's going on. I just had to really figure it out for myself like most people do. They don't have somebody there to kind of like necessarily take accountability for everything that happens along the way. And so I just embodied that and I became this pain body and I moved through life lying and tearing through my own life. And I ran away from home when I was 17. And I was living in Sacramento at the time, and just became this street kid who with a guitar, and and I started playing with other homeless kids, and we started like a homeless band.
Really?
Yeah, and we started.
You were
playing,
literally sleeping on the streets, or in
literally
shelters?
Sleeping on the streets at 17. I left 11th grade, and headed for the streets. And my mother was like, why are you doing this? I don't understand. And I know now where I am now at 46 years old, what I was running towards, and I was a seeker, much like you, when you got exposure to Ram Dass and when you got exposure to Maharaji eventually. It's just, all of life started to make sense, and at this point it didn't make sense why a kid was choosing to be on the street, but there was a lot that had happened to me that I hadn't talked about, and I was...
So your mother was not aware of all of what was going on? She
was, but she was also trying to provide for herself, and her line of work has been... jewelry. It's she's a Native American jewelry collector and dealer, and has been my whole life, and vintage also. And so she was on the road, and I was a teenager, and so I just thought I could do it better on my own. And my mother ran away from home actually when she was my age, and so Yeah. There's a bit of a
talk about inherited karma.
No kidding. Well, and also my mother had sexual abuse in her childhood, and this is from different people, and even different, sides of the family. It was just, it found me in the same way that it found her, and I think that broke her heart a bit to know that had happened, and so anyway,
pushed it out.
Well, everybody is doing their best, and I think that's what I was doing at the time, but. At 17, when I was playing with those musicians, those kids, those homeless kids, it was summertime around, and it was warm enough to sleep on the street. But I wandered, and I started playing coffee shops, and with this band, this homeless band, and this famous punk rock sort of godfather named Kevin Seconds. There's this band called 7 Seconds. And he hosted one of these open mics, and he took a shine to me and always gave me a good slot. And it was like I was getting mentorship, from, I didn't know it then, but I was getting mentorship, and it really felt good to be in someone's care who knew more than me. And this is the kind of seeking I think that I've been looking for my whole life is, to find sources of wisdom that go beyond my pain body and my mind. And it's been a long series of those, including ending up with Ram Dass, Maharaji, Raghu, and all the rest.
What was the fulcrum that allowed you to understand there was a path?
So I got
to be free.
Yeah, I got lucky. I burned everything to the ground at 26. Oh, really? I burned it all to the ground. I was homeless on Skid Row for a second time in my life. I had kind of, after getting
26.
26. This is 10 years later.
Between 17 and 26?
I kind of got off the streets. I put a little bit of a life together. I started working regular jobs. I formed a band, a legit band, not a homeless band, but the homeless band was my start, And I started living life, and I actually my band got on That 70s Show and Third Rock from the Sun. We were the prom band on a couple episodes, and that was huge for us. And but I was always chasing this identity of being a musician. And I'd been doing that my whole life since very young. And I was just like a diehard. And I was like, this is what I'm doing, what I'm here to do. And it's probably what I'm chasing out here on the streets all these times. And after a little bit of success in between 17 and 26 with music, I started to really get into this identity, and it was killing me. And I didn't know that. But this pain body that was holding all these secrets and all the stuff that had happened to me and everything. Have you ever been in a psychedelic trip where you can open your eyes and you can still see the world and go, oh, okay, good, it's still here. And then you close your eyes again and you're in this thing. Yeah, well, yeah. I wasn't able to do that anymore. The outsides looked like the insides, just broken. And so I headed downtown to Skid Row, and at 26, because no one else would have me. My mother even had moved away from me and not giving me her address. She was just like, I'm the last person in your life. And I can't even look at you. And with tears in her eyes, she said goodbye to me as I got in a cab and drove downtown to Skid Row. And I lived down there for a little bit. And this is the second time now, and I'm going in and out of a porta potty down there, and I'm sitting there with other families and trying to get into a shelter when I could. And, these were my people though. At this time, we were in the business of doing the same thing, escaping our feelings, escaping the hurt identity. And so I felt kind of a kinship being down there, even though I stood out like a sore thumb, And at one point I was sitting in the gutter, 26. I'm looking, and there's this family next to me. This woman is sitting in the gutter with me, but she's braiding her kid's hair. And this is just accepted, and I'm looking at this and I hear this voice in my head, and it says, you're not supposed to be here. Keep going. And it wasn't like you're better than all this. It was just like, this isn't the stop, man. And so I got up and I walked somewhere else and I fell asleep. And when I woke up, there was this van that had pulled in front of me, and there was these feet that were loading to get into the van. And this was a stop. I didn't know it, but there was this stop there that that took men to the state-funded treatment center like once a month that stops there and picks up people. And the driver came out as I woke up from the sidewalk. There's a rat ran by me also. I remember that just to tell the story a little further. And this is 5th and Crocker or 7th and San Julian, if you're familiar with downtown and
downtown
LA.
Oh, LA.
Yeah. So the guy says, "Do you want to go to treatment?" And I was sitting in my boxers at this point. I didn't have anything left. And it was a shitty pair of boxers. It was just like they were white, but they were so used that they were almost see-through or something. And I said, "Are there girls there?" And I legit asked that question in my boxers with nothing else going on, you know? And he said, "No, but there's another way of life." And I sat honestly weighing my options at this point. Nowhere else to go, nothing. But still, like, what's in it for me? You know, still lost. But anyway, I got in the van almost naked and went to that center and started doing traditional recovery. And that was like my first spiritual experience, I think, as an adult was actually in a rehab van driving to a doctor's appointment the first week that I was there, just feeling terrible. I'd been using meth, heroin, methadone, and for years. But I was vegetarian and smoking organic cigarettes. It's ridiculous. Oh. Anyway, so my first spiritual experience was driving to this doctor's visit. And what the experience was my mother always talked about a natural high in life. She taught me that God is love when I was younger. She said, God is love. And so she said, and there's a natural high that exists in the world. She used to tell me that while I'm like loaded, you know, not getting it. But what happened was we're in the van and the radio went on. I hadn't heard music in a while. And I heard, you know, it was like classic rock or something. They were playing U2, and this is 2003. They're playing U2 like Joshua Tree. And I'm hearing Where the Streets Have No Name. And it's like so powerful because the power of music could hit me because I didn't have all these layers in between me and the music. It was just raw and visceral. And I think that was my first legit spiritual experience.
Wow.
The next one was when I went to an AA meeting. And I'd never been, and this was at the center, at the rehab center. And we're talking, this is where it's a state-funded place, so it's where people go if you're either homeless or you get the opportunity to do the rest of your prison stay in rehab because it was a drug-related charge. Yeah. So it's 500 guys in the mountains in like cabins with like bunk beds, and there's 60 bunks to a room. And so that's the scene up there. And it's a lot of prison talk, and you have to get up early in the morning and make your bed hospital corners and
yes,
you know, and all that. And I'm just feeling terrible. I'm kicking all of the years of drugs, and the pain body person is still there. And somebody says, "Come on, you're coming with me." And that little thing there, "Come on, you're coming with me." I've followed that thing for years now. That, hey, come here, you might like this. You know, and that was my first one. I went with him just feeling terrible, just kicking all his drugs. And I walked into this AA meeting and I didn't know that's what it was. And everybody was laughing, but they weren't laughing at me. They were laughing at something that the speaker was saying that I used to do, like steal. Everybody was laughing about this. Oh my God. They were laughing because they related. You know? And so, and I heard the laughter about this thing that I felt so much shame over in my whole life. These things that I used to do that I thought I was the only one and nobody understood me. It was like being terminally unique, they call it, you know? Where you're just,
I never heard that.
You're just so unique that no one and nothing can reach
unique.
You. Yes.
Oh, that's good. I write that down for my memoir.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Oh boy. Yeah.
But that was it. The laughter around this particular issue that I had shame around, it changed my life. It competed with the drug kick. I felt better for a second. And I was like, wow, whatever that is. And what I know now is the collective. It's just like in Native American tribes, like the council that would go on where they would pass a talking piece and no one would talk specifically about the issue, but somehow within the collective, the truth would arise. And I think that's what happened in AA for me. Yeah. And then I met a guy about a year into recovery, and he got up at the podium in AA and he shared the same thing. He said, I wandered downtown 20 years ago and I had no plan on going to rehab. And I took some pills and I didn't even know what I took. And I started to wobble and this guy in a white van started waving towards me. And he said, and it had been a long time since anyone had invited me anywhere. So I went, and it was rehab. He woke up from a blackout and he was in the same place that I was in, but 20 years earlier, the same story. He got me meditating with A Course in Miracles to start.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He was my first AA sponsor, and I'm not a part of AA anymore, but this early on, that was my deal. And he was somebody who I needed somebody to show me how to be a human now. Like how to be I say a man because I identify as a man. And I always have. And so I wanted to know how to use the equipment because I'd always taken and I had a big heart, but I couldn't access it. And so this man, through A Course in Miracles and through his mentorship, he started getting me meditating. And I would meditate. I worked at Amoeba Music in Hollywood. It was one of my first music jobs.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, sober jobs.
I saw you there.
Yeah, you probably did. And as I was learning to meditate, I didn't know that you're supposed to seek like a serene environment. I was so new to it that I didn't know that like it was helpful to go in a place where there's no distraction or something. I think that's what most people do. So I just went out to Sunset Boulevard and just sat on the side of the building with all the foot traffic and all the cars going by honking. And I practiced meditation out there, not knowing any better. Not knowing how this would be really serving me later, because it's not about finding a pristine, still space. It's about noticing if there is one, and I know that now. But it started me there with like just all this distraction so I could really hear where it's quiet in me.
That's perfect. You got the perfect meditation lesson.
And then that guy, he felt like he had about 10 years left of his life. He was feeling, my mentor felt like, I've probably got about 10 years left. I got Hep C in my liver. And he goes like, I really want to go to Tibet. I've never been to Tibet. He was reading the Tibetan Book of the Dead at the time, and he hadn't read it since college in the 70s. And he was like, I really want to see it. I just want to go. I don't know if I want to be a Buddhist or what, but I want to go there. And through a series of events, he was able to get into Tibet, snuck in. This 6'6" tall white man somehow was snuck beyond the borders and people risked their lives to get him in to meet a teacher. And he met his teacher in a cave and lived with him for a month and then started bringing home what he could to me. And that started my relationship with Vajrayana Buddhism. Yeah.
Who was that?
His name was Vic Anderson, and he was right about the 10 years. Oh, sorry, the Lama?
No, that's nice to hear. It's good. I hate to say it. I'm not biased against white people, but yeah, who's the Lama?
Yeah, so Lama Karwang was his name.
Karwang.
Yes, and Lama Karwang was one of the people who got rounded up in the early occupation of Tibet and tortured and kept in prison for years. And the story of Lama Karwang is that, that he was one of the people who would cry when he was being beaten. But he wasn't crying because of his wounds. He was crying because of the karma that the inflictors were going to have to suffer from beating him. And he would cry and it would echo through the whole prison, they said, but it had this cry and it made people feel joyous in some weird way because it was purely motivated. So he had that kind of effect on the prison. It was 20 years after the occupation that they finally decided to release him, but they thought they'd throw him out in a snowstorm that was coming. Just throw him out in the blizzard and then go collect the body in the morning. So they released him, and this is like in the late 80s, I think. They released him, and they went out in the morning, and he was sitting in the lotus position with melted snow, like grass forming around him, and yep, that's right, steam coming off his body, and they had never seen anything like it. So they bowed and they released him. But since then, he had hid up in this cave, and my teacher got access to him and started bringing me back what he could,
Really? Oh, that's quite a great story. Is he still alive?
No, so he passed in 2015, and he was right. His life was coming to an end, and he helped rebuild monasteries. He just saw the Tibetan people and saw how joyous they were and how little they had, and how it's a land of vegetation where you can't even grow vegetation, and it's a land of vegetarians who can't even be vegetarian. It's a land of Tibetan Buddhists who can't practice Tibetan Buddhism in their own country. He saw this and how joyful that they were, with holes in their walls of their buildings and their rubble of monasteries, still doing the practices. So he wanted to change that. So he started a nonprofit and started sneaking back cash into Tibet in prayer wheels, gigantic prayer wheels. Yeah, because you had to sneak it in. But he did a lot in his life, and definitely a bit of the spark from him transfer over to me. Wow. I got into addiction and mental health treatment work. That was what I've done for the last 15, 16 years. So I've been kind of the mystic in drug and alcohol and mental health centers. And I call myself a professional Ram Dass, and I joked around with you the other day about that because I give talks and lectures. I work with people individually. I work with the dying. I work with the living. I work with married people, and I work at births. But I've just become somebody who, at a certain point, with all this great story that I've told you, at a certain point, all of that was killing me still. The musician, the sober guy, all these new identities that most people strive to get to. And I started to get music jobs and work as a composer in the sobriety and build a name for myself. But that's really what was strangling me, was this name and this identity and all these preferences around, this life story. I had a great life story. I mean, people could just rest from there and go, you survived Skid Row, you got married, you have a career now. All that stuff was still too tight. I was going, who am I outside of all of this even? All of this, because this is hurting me. It's hurting me to keep up this become a name. It's all the stuff that Ram Dass talked about, becoming nobody.
I don't know if you know this story, but it is so apropos. And everybody out there listening or watching right now, you probably have heard this story because it's a recent thing that I heard in the last year or so, and I can't stop. It keeps reverberating in me at different times when I'm able to see clearly all of my selfish motivation and attachment.
Yes.
Basically, in terms of operating day-to-day, manipulating, doing everything we can. Well, I got to create the best career, right? I've got to be the best therapist. I got to make a name for myself here.
Yes.
I got family to support, all of the normal stuff.
Yeah.
Anyhow, one day, Krishna Das was in Maui. We were all in Maui with Ram Dass when he was alive. And we used to go to the beach on a Monday, a certain beach, and he loved to go swimming, where he could become free of his wheelchair.
Oh, joy, oh, joy.
Yeah, oh, joy, oh, joy. And then one day, Krishna Das got there late or something, but Ram Dass was alone in his car, looking completely glum.
Oh.
He used to look like that. Krishna said, what's up? What's wrong?
Yeah.
Or not what's wrong. What's up?
Yeah.
He looked at him. He said, I'm a fake and you're a fake.
Holy shit.
And Krishna Das was like, yeah, but we're real fakes.
Krishna Das always with the great saves in these.
Yeah. But just think about it. The only thing that, like in your case, talking about this and say, I'm still going through because I'm attached to all of the roles and identities.
Yes.
And so what's really going on is really what we're talking about. We're talking about you're doing all of these wonderful things that are helping others and so on.
Yeah.
And yet you feel like a fake.
Yeah.
Because of, the self-interested motivation, all of the stuff that makes us feel like a piece of shit, basically, right?
It's so true.
And then you just think of what he said, but we're real fakes. What does that mean? It means it's okay to be human.
Right.
And we understand that in the deepest part of ourselves, we do give a shit.
Yes,
and we do care for other people.
Yeah.
And we do want mudita, others to be, their happiness is our happiness. We do want all of these things.
Yes.
We are heartful.
Yeah.
But we're as stuck as everybody else in any moment that we self-identify with our thoughts, our stories, our roles, our identities, and all. So I thought it's a beautiful little story.
I didn't know that story, and I thought I would have been one of the people counted in one of the, I thought I would have been one of the people counted in on the people who know the story. So thank you for that. But what I found is I was getting high early on being a victim. When I was younger, I was getting high on my identity of being a victim, and I got high on drugs. And then I got sober, and I switched over to getting high on this new identity of this sober person, this person who's a composer and who helps people and all that. It was just a transference of ego. It was now into a more industrious and a more socially accepted domain.
Exactly. It's beautiful. It had all of the character.
Oh, yeah.
This wonderful new spiritual path. And
exactly.
We're
something.
Are light and love.
That's right. That's right.
But it's the big thing around, not dealing with the tough stuff that's inside ourselves. It's spiritual bypass is a bypass in itself.
That's right.
But I know we're a spiritual bypass, and then you're just continue it in another way.
Yeah.
And again, so Jack Kornfield does the greatest bit on this. It's okay. We're human. It's okay. Just watch yourself. Look at yourself. You got this thing in the middle of your head and you stuff shit into it and it gets digested by something. I don't know what. And then have you ever watched yourself having sex? Oh my God, that's really ridiculous.
Yeah. I don't understand how people could have sex on LSD. I never understood that. And it was like
one of the greatest things that ever happened to me the first time I took acid. Very first.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's extraordinary.
Yeah. Well, with someone I loved, though, that made a difference.
That does make a difference.
Yeah.
So in this transference, it was still ego, and I realized that, and I realized also that I was like my life had gotten small again. As big as it had gotten, my outlook was small because I felt like basically I was suffocated. I was suffocated by identity. And my mother had always said, like I said, God is love. And I thought at this moment of difficulty, while this new identity now and all the demands of that are steering me away from perhaps what I'm truly here for, is what it felt like. I suspected that maybe there was another me outside of even my musicianship and my musicianhood. I thought maybe there's somebody else in there, and so I did something really radical. I decided that every day I was going to wake up and just surrender completely and fully. And I was interested in Yogananda at this point, and Ram Dass was on the way. He was coming up. But at the time, I had gone to SRF, and I was feeling really charged by Yogananda, and took the kids, and they were getting meditation lessons, and it was really sweet. But I just thought, okay, I'm going to take a big risk and just leave all my identities behind, and I'm going to do whatever shows up, because this is where my life's gotten to. It's the Skid Row of my mind this time. It's not the Skid Row in LA. It's the one here where I'm just like down and out going, this isn't it. Just like the original voice that said it when I was down there. Now it's saying it again. You're not supposed to be here. There's something else. Keep moving. And so I surrendered every morning, and I thought, if there's a God, then it's going to save me. And it's going to come to my aid, and it's going to show me something about myself, or maybe it doesn't exist. And I'm finally going to say that if it doesn't come to me now. And so what happened was I meditate every morning and I would say this. I would say, take my life, make of it what you will, show me where to go, what to say when I get there. Not my way, your way. Every day I said that earnestly, like with a burning thing in me. And I wasn't going to be the version of me I'd been. I quit music. I wouldn't even listen to it. I wanted something pure. I wanted to know what else there was. And it happened to be at a time where my family was struggling financially. And so it was like, my wife used to say, hey, listen, meditation and sitting still is not going to get the job done. But it did. And it's now a whole life, I mean, I teach people to meditate and as a primary. That's like mainly what I do. Music is just something I used to do. But anyway, I did this for a year. And then I wandered into a treatment center to visit a friend. And the owners of this treatment center saw that surrender in my eyes. And they said, we want you here. And I started working at this center in Malibu that was new. And they made me the spiritual director of the place. And I started showing them how to surrender, just like I did. And this is a crucial moment for people in sobriety or when they're dealing with mental health, is because the identity is actually the thing that's causing all the pain. It's these stories, it's these misidentifications that we have with ourselves that are kind of actually the real burden here, and that we're carrying. And they need recontextualization, and they need what you said early on. You said something about like how, I forget what it was, but they basically need to see the goodness in their story and how they care. See, I think addiction, it's signaling something actually more of what's going right than what's going wrong, because it's saying there's something wrong in the family. There's something wrong right now with me. And the addiction and all of the signs of that are bringing attention to this, that we societally go like, oh, you're sick, we got to put you away. But really, this is an us problem. The addiction is signaling there's something wrong in humanity and something wrong in this particular family that needs addressing. So that's what I tell addicts when I meet them, is like, you're more of the signal of something changing in your family. You're not the mistake. You're not the black sheep. You're the one that's probably born to change it all. But don't let that be a heavy trip, Yeah.
Your mother said God is love.
Yeah.
From an early age. It's father was missing. Hate to go through this therapeutic.
No, they just split up, and they were both musicians. And my father was Catholic raised, but he was into kind of everything. He was open to Eastern, read a lot of Buddhist books. And my mother was Christian Science, actually, 3 generations.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So it's through those generations. The generational thing seems really powerful in your case, because the immediate circumstances weren't, although there was that trauma, sexual trauma.
Yeah.
And there's no otherwise on that one. That can really go a long way to helping destroy a psyche of somebody who, it takes a lot of work to come through that.
Yeah, what we have to do within that is see the person as not having invented the molestation. And that's what I had to do, is like, I saw him as doing something that was done most likely to him. Like,
that's the way it is.
And that's the way it is. And so it freed him up, and I just saw him as another one of me. And so I think that's the only way really to find forgiveness, is to see how this could happen. The backstory. That's why these Marvel movies with backstories on the villains are actually so helpful. It's starting to show a sign that we should look into why these villains show up in life.
But it really points to, I think we all have that generational karma, in one way or the other, that we are dealing with, that's handed down to my mind got exploded in a huge blast of dynamite. My famous story where my guru, Neem Karoli Baba, made me give my father acid.
What?
Made me. He didn't make me. You don't know this story? No. You haven't read this book. You would love the book about all of our stories going back to India with called "Love Everyone."
Oh, that book?
Yeah, everybody out there, that's a great book because it tells all of our stories of following Ram Dass back to India and what happened in our whole trip over there and meeting this incredible being. So anyhow, one thing I did, although my father and I, this is again, I have to put a little caveat here. I'm so sorry, everybody. Jaymee doesn't know this story, so I want to tell him. But you've heard me tell it a billion times.
Sorry. I'm so sorry.
It's your fault. Anyhow, I'll make it brief. Basically, we didn't get along. I was a rebellious teenager and he was a tyrant from the Second World War, PTSD'd out of his mind.
Yeah.
So, but I still wrote to him when I went to India. My brother was with me, my future wife. And I still wrote and said, boy, this is incredible. I cannot believe what I ended up here. I didn't say anything beyond this is incredible. I don't believe. I actually still have letters, the letters from that time.
Yeah.
So one day he said, well, I'm on my way. I'll be there in a couple of weeks. I go, what? No, I can't have you here.
Yeah.
And he ended up coming. We went to see Maharaji in Vrindavan, which is Krishna's town. It's not a few hours south of Delhi.
Wow.
And so it's a walled compound. Outside is a beautiful statue of Hanuman. And so we're all tossed our shoes off and running to see him. And by the way, that was like if you saw, you never had Haagen-Dazs and you saw a Haagen-Dazs store or, it would be, oh God. And you had your first thing and you were addicted immediately.
Oh, totally. Right? Yes.
So that's kind of what it was. So we're really looking forward to getting at that Haagen-Dazs.
Yeah.
But Dad, he didn't know from nothing. He had lace shoes on. So he was trying to take care of, getting his shoes off. And he didn't know what was going on. So he wasn't rushing to get in there. Anyhow, I got in there first and Maharaji said, your father's here, right? Like, I knew,
this
was a nothing demonstration of I know everything. There's nothing to talk about, past, present, future karma.
Yeah.
Anyhow, my father gets in there and he talks about our family and his my mother, who he had divorced many years before that. Well, not that many, like 6-7 years before that.
Yeah.
And how she's a good person. He kept saying to my father. And then he looked at me and said, you only love your father because he gives you money, right?
Wow.
And I'm like, well, I don't know. Really? I mumbled and fumbled. And then he says, did you give him the medicine? And I said, yes, he had a cold. I gave him some Tylenol. And he went, night. The yogi medicine Ram Dass gave me.
Oh my God.
And then I went, acid? And my father went, LSD?
Oh,
and Maharaji turned back to me and said, take care of your father while he's in India and meet me in 2 weeks in this other city.
Whoa.
Actually, with another devotee was there and he used to stay there.
Yeah.
So we went to Benares.
Wow.
Benares
sure.
is where people go to die for the last thousands of years. There's been burning bodies on the banks. And we found a houseboat about 80 yards from where they burn the bodies constantly 24/7. Like, you go out and you're brushing your teeth in the river, right? In the morning and you get up and then you see pieces of bodies because they didn't get enough wood to burn the whole bodies floating by. And dolphins, they have dolphins there that eat the bodies. I mean, it's insane.
The dolphins eat the bodies.
Yeah, they feed off of them. Dog. I have a great picture of a dog. Anyhow, that's terrible. I shouldn't go there because
but I thought of something too. I thought of the movie The Cove, and it was like I think something about dolphin slaughter or something like that. And this is like in reverse. Now the dolphins get revenge in this movie.
Yeah, right. Oh, right. Yeah, dolphins. Yeah. Anyhow, I'm walking down the street. Friend comes along. You got any acid? Yep, I got one hit. Gives me the acid. My father actually takes it.
Wow. Now, what's the impetus there? Like, what for him to take it? I mean, is he enthralled by Maharaji's request, or is that just something
he got? He got blown away. He was told. Maharaji said, "You got on a plane, it landed in Frankfurt. You sat next to an Indian businessman, and then blah blah. And nobody could know this shit. And so he was punched in the face, basically. We all got our minds broken. Baseball. It was like a baseball bat. You know, that's why, these crazy people who ended up there, were, as I said to some group the other day, we were basically miscreants that he assembled and straightened out, and that we needed to have that thing right in front of us for some reason. And many of us, of course, brought this back, the legacy back.
Of course.
Anyhow, he took the acid. He had a death trip because it's all death down there. We're right down the street from the burning, where they burn the bodies 24/7. We walked in, there was a dead donkey on the banks, and then we walked in towards town and in the alleys there, and there was a dead person. There were people, people were throwing money by the body to get enough wood to burn it properly.
Wow.
Right? So he thought he wasn't afraid to die. Well, he got straightened out very quickly on this acid trip about that. And that then we went back to see Maharaji, who never said a word about it except Ganges water, very pure.
Yeah.
He didn't speak like that. He was also a translator, but that's my interpretation. And so he then told him other stuff, actually around a horse farm, and my father had saved a horse's life. He wouldn't give up on it. The vet told him to, it had to be euthanized, and he wouldn't do it, and he saved his leg.
Wow.
Applying actually green clay, which is a great thing, by the way.
Yeah.
Anyhow, he related the whole story, and then my father went, boom, that was the end of him. He fell down on the floor, and from that moment on, my whole family ended up in India. My father, my mother, my brother, my sister, and all their partners.
That's incredible.
My mother's. And the whole course of our family history.
Yeah.
Did we still have to, Maharaji said at one point, I've done everything for you, but I leave you the mind. So that's what you're talking about and what I'm talking about in terms of you get on the path, you understand intuitively, and you have intuitive trust for that place inside that you have recognized.
Yeah.
And then that's why you look out at what roles and identities, and you get caught and you're human. What are you going to do? It's okay. They pass. And you that trust and intuition is all about the revealing of that, that that good-heartedness that we all absolutely basically have. Yeah. And it just gets covered up by the story that we tell each other. Yep. So in my case, it was radical dynamite for my father that allowed us then to become friends and to have a relationship for the rest of our life. It was unbelievable.
That's incredible. Well, see, and you were talking about generational trauma earlier, and this is a purification of generational trauma, if I've ever heard one. I mean, your father getting zapped in that way.
That's what I mean.
And then, the whole family comes over. And I think that it can happen in a lifetime. I believe that we could be the ones born to stop it. It could all end with us.
Absolutely.
And that's been the case with me because my kids went through a divorce, just like I did, around the same age. But myself and my ex-wife did it differently than my parents did. Yeah. And we learned from it, and we stayed true to that. Above everything else, we did what we said we were going to do for them, and we created a difference in their life. And so they got healed up from that. And I think it all goes down the line also. I think when we get free from the generational trauma, it spreads down the line. All those who have been in bondage, I feel like, get free as far back as we go, And so that's a compelling notion that I tell people. I really believe that, and I've seen it. And my kids now are my mother had been abused sexually when she was 6 to 12, and mine happened around 12. My kids now are both teenagers, and it's over. It's done. It all ended with me and my mother. We dealt with this stuff and we faced it, and now you have this ability to measure it by your own children and how free they are.
Oh, wow, that's so great.
I think my secret was, I looked back and I thought, in all these missed connections, who would it have been nice to have there? What would they have said? How would they have treated me? In all these difficult moments in my life, where I was sidelined and something had happened and it was without explanation and it was without apology, and I embodied it and thought that it was me. At all those moments, who would it have been nice to have there? And so I just made a kind of a list of like all the attributes that they would have, and I became that person for other people. So I become what I needed in the world, for other people,
Perfect.
And that's the deal. And I've done that since in that treatment center. I worked there for a few years and did sweat lodges and co-facilitated sweat lodges with a Native American elder and got that education, which I found to be very much like the Tibetan, the culture and some of the practices and the rituals are very similar. And then I opened my own center, which is called Good Heart. And it's in Santa Barbara. You said good-heartedness a minute ago, and I thought that was fun because the center in Santa Barbara is called Good Heart Recovery, and Lacey, my partner, and I, and we did it with this other couple, opened a center modeled after the time that I missed, the time that you were alive in the 60s when the counterculture was booming. And I always felt like I missed that era of happenings and things like that. So we created a center that felt kind of like a happening,
That's cool.
It was great.
That's
it was
really cool.
Just a place to find yourself.
Yeah, I love the word. Actually, we're going to, under my hat, Director of Love Serve Remember Foundation, we're going to put on a Ram Dass course this spring in 2023. We are right now. The Yoga of Heartfulness.
Nice.
Because that's really, that's his emblem.
Yes.
Sharing, heartfulness, love, compassion, that's Ram Dass, compassion. So I have this thing. So here's some, I don't know, did I show you this book?
Yeah, no, I know this book. I haven't read it yet, and I love Shambhala. And on my podcast, I'm interviewing Sam Burkholz this Sunday, the founder of Shambhala, on the Love is the Author podcast. But I love everything they put out, and I'm a huge Chogyam Trungpa reader.
Do you know Pema? Do you know who Pema Chodron is?
I'm a huge Pema fan, but I've never met her. I'm just friends.
Just her books.
Yeah. She's highly quotable.
One of the best books I've read in quite some time because her level of clarity, translating the teachings, Tibetan teachings, into the be here now world.
Yeah,
I would call
it,
is really great. So I wanted to just read this one thing because now, the book is called How We Live is How We Die. And the whole thing is about, it's not just thinking of the things that you can do to center yourself into a place so that you will pass through the bardos in a much more open-hearted, relaxed, non-fearful way, basically.
Beautiful.
That's a huge generalization, but these things apply for us. This thing I'm going to read is phenomenal advice for us just living our lives. I don't care if you're, 18 years old.
Right.
And you just realize, there is a way to be free and happy.
That's right.
You took acid or something, mushroom, whatever it is, you read a book, you heard a piece of music, like you and I.
Yeah.
That happened for us.
So
here it is. To the degree that our heart has opened in life, to that degree it will open in death. In this way, when we move through the bardo of dying and beyond, we will automatically think of others. This is the whole key to everything. Living, going through the bardo of dying.
Yeah.
Instead of our heart contracting in the bardo, it will expand. We may get captured by fear and start to withdraw into ourselves. But then, because of our former practice, and there's the key word, practice, because it does take that, we'll naturally pull ourselves out of a tailspin. We'll look around to see who is there with us, and we'll wonder what they are going through. Since a positive state of mind is so important at death and in the bardos, this open-heartedness towards others will make for a peaceful and positive journey. It will provide the perfect causes and conditions for awakening at any point during the in-between stage between death and birth. Unlike the warmth of kindness, the warmth of devotion to a teacher can be surprisingly difficult for many of us even to consider, let alone embrace. For some, the mere word, quote unquote, devotion can be unsettling, particularly when connected with spiritual teachers. This is because in modern times, too many teachers have actually harmed their students and betrayed their trust.
Yeah.
And yet, and this is it right here, it's all right here. And yet, believe me, devotion to an authentic teacher who only cares for your benefit is magical. To quote Dzogchen Panlap Rinpoche, it is a quote unquote, a key that unlocks the doorway to the most profound experiences of mind. And you talked, and we were just talking, you talked a bunch about, a very transforming thing, for you, which was surrender.
The bardo in the living, yes. The bardo of the living, applying that for the bardo right now of the in-betweens, of life, for sure.
Exactly. And that's exactly the point. But we had a mentor, KK Shah.
Yes.
And he came to some of the retreats in Maui with Ram Dass. He was Ram Dass's closest spiritual brother. And he was the first translator for Ram Dass and where Maharaji sent Ram Dass to go be with the family, Indian fans, where a lot of what we present at these retreats that we do, what we did with Ram Dass for many years and that we do now, where he's there in spirit, of course, is about this connectivity, extending family to a much larger purview.
Yes.
And he taught us, he said, you don't know anything about surrender, you Westerners.
Yeah.
Because you think there's an act of you doing something.
Oh, right.
And he said in India, the word for it in Hindi is Sharanagat. It's Sharanagat.
Sharanagat.
And he gave a talk, and we have this, maybe it's a transcription, I'm not quite sure. We're going to include it in this course because it's so important. Yeah. It gets down to one of the examples he gets. First of all, he said it's the last thing that a spiritual aspirant, it's the last thing that happens. Because there's no one doing it. So you get to a point where you're no longer the doer, and that's when it can happen.
Exactly. I believe
that. He said, just think of yourself. You're in the desert and there's no water.
Yeah. Yes. Right. What do you do then? Right.
Yeah. And there's the kind of surrender that is not any personal effort to surrender. Yeah. There's nothing else to do. You get to, that's why it's at the very end. Anyway, it's a fantastic talk. It's something you personally, never mind we're doing this podcast, I think you and everybody, including myself, to read it again or listen to it again.
Oh, yeah.
I'll get, we'll get a transcript.
I would love that. And this thing that you're talking about is, well, first of all, I'm a huge fan of KK, and I know he followed Ram Dass right away. It seemed like he went. Didn't he die just after?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, just literally weeks. In fact, only 2 weeks ago was the 3rd anniversary.
Oh, yeah.
Of his death. Yeah, I was very close to him. I spent so much time with him. I'm working on a movie, a doc around him right now.
Amazing.
Because we have something for each of our mentors.
Yeah.
There was 3 main mentors, Siddhi Ma being a saint in her own right. So I don't even think of her that way. I mean, that was my mother. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
But Dada Mukherjee, who wrote the greatest book, if you want to know what Maharaji was like, it's called By His Grace.
Okay.
And then Casey Tuari. We did this movie Brilliant Disguise, which is just out now on Amazon and Apple, Google, blah blah.
I wrote you about it right after watching it. It was just amazing. I was so moved by his devotion, and that's what I keep learning about devotion. Like what was said earlier by you is that by Pema in her description is that devotion. My teacher Lama Lanang Rinpoche, he's a Vajrayana teacher, and he tells me, he's like. It's hard not to do an impression of him because I'm getting good at it. But he goes, when you have devotion, you're not devoted towards me. He's like, you're devoted for you. He's like, this devotion grows in you. It doesn't go to me. You just use me as the path to bring on devotion in your own body. Where else do you feel it? You know, and he tells me that, and he says, I love everybody. And much like Ram Dass had a picture of Donald Trump on his altar, he goes, my teacher goes, even Donald Trump. And then he goes, what, Lama, you like Donald Trump? He does like this, he does this Jim Gaffigan kind of like audience member thing. And then he goes, yes, he's like, hate. He's like, hate. If I hate, I have to feel the hate. Why would I want to hate anybody? And that's so powerful, you know? And it's definitely something that came late stages, but I remember there was this moment where, and it was right around the time of that first kirtan with you, where my father had a hospitalization, and there was moments where it didn't look like he was going to make it. And it was very devastating. And I'm a spiritual mentor, and so I see like 15 people a week, and I do a podcast, and I'm just in love with everything and everyone. I'm just truly especially romantic about Vajrayana Buddhism, but not exclusively. I'm in love with everything, and so wherever I go, I learn about people, and I tell them if I see them doing something that's amazing that every day gets overlooked. I tell them if I see kindness, and so I'm out there doing all of that, all the time. And so there's a lot of output being this guy. And at this point where my father was going through that, and I'm like wondering if he's going to make it, and it's so heavy. And I'm raising kids also. And so there was this weekend where my kids weren't going to be there, and all this is happening. And it's so heavy. And I'm looking like I'm going to get my first rest in a while on this weekend. And what happened was a stray hive of bees found a home in our attic on that weekend. And all these bees were just flooding into our house, coming through the vents. After weeks of just going through, just having all this output, helping people with their own traumas, nonstop, and putting out a podcast and dealing with my own father's illness. Now the bees in the house, and there was, when ants get in the house or whatever it is, I go to every length to shuffle a sheet of paper underneath the ants to try and yes, exactly. So I'm just trying to save lives. So what do you do when the bees are in your house now? And so what my partner and I were doing on our Saturday was just taking one bee at a time outside while I'm dealing with the world's heaviness, and there was nowhere to go. There was no one to blame this on. There was nothing to do other than this. And I found myself in that very claustrophobic space that ended up being one of the ego's final disappointments, as it's been put. Something happened in that moment where I saw that I'm still in this act. Even though all this is going on, I'm still in this act of saving the bees. It's the only thing to do. There's nothing else to do. And in that moment, it was so powerful to watch myself still care, still care this much. And I think we're all caring all the time, and our caring goes wild, and it takes us into health concerns, where we start caring about ourselves so much, we start eating too much, or we don't exercise, or we take too many drugs, but it's all care under there. we're actually trying to do the best for ourselves. If we knew that our core thought was actually care, our core beginning, and it goes wild after that. It does all this stuff that, you know?
Yeah, here's a mantra.
Yeah.
We're going to end with this mantra.
Beautiful.
It's a beautiful mantra. Every thought, and everything comes from a thought.
That's right.
The mantra is, and that too.
And that too.
That's the first mantra Ram Dass came back with the first time he was in India when he got the quote-unquote map of consciousness. And that too. It's okay.
This
and
also
you don't
happens.
Follow it. Yeah. I'm attached still to caring. I'm not. I really do care. I'm not. It's still just another thought.
That's
it's
right.
Like, I gotta pee now. I gotta eat. Got to go to my car. Where's my keys? It's all, and that too.
Well, I want to
mantra.
Before we end, I want to tell you that right at that time, I think it was the day before, I went to go sit with you for the first time. I got invited to your place, and it was a kirtan, and I met you there. Well, I mean, we had met a few times before, but here I'm at your house, and you and I end up sitting next to each other, and you know, the whole time my father was in the hospital, there was an image that I was working with, and it was he and I playing catch. He and I were playing catch back and forth, and that was a childhood memory, and it was something that we got to do a few years ago, and it returned me to that, and so it was this sweet feeling, you know, and it was like I wanted to see my dad in his perfection and not concentrate on the illness, you know, and so I thought about he and I playing catch, and then I went and sat with you. After the bees and after all that stuff has calmed down, I'm sitting next to you, and I said something to you, and you go, "Huh? You just reminded me of a dream I had last night of Ram Dass. Do you remember this dream?"
No, tell me.
Okay, you said,
refresh me.
And I
remember I had this dream, but I can't remember what it was.
Okay.
That's terrible.
So, no, it's not. No, it was for me, Raghu. It was for me. The dream was for me, and I'll tell you why.
I'll remember it when you tell me.
You will. You said, it was the strangest thing. You're like, Ram Dass and I were playing catch.
Oh, right.
You said, and I said, and I'm like, almost looked around conspiratorially, like, is anybody else? Okay, he's about to tell me a fresh Ram Dass story. For one, it was fresh off the press, you know? And I've heard so many stories come through you about Ram Dass, but this was in the flesh, and it had happened the night before. Yeah. And you said, we were playing catch. And I said, have you ever played catch with Ram Dass? And you're like, no. It's like, he wasn't a sports fan. And I like some sports, but not baseball, you know? And you were like, it was the strangest thing. And I didn't tell you in that moment. But that was like, you know, that morning before I came to sit with you, I sat in meditation, and Maharaji said, I'm going to hide in you today, and let's see if they find you. Let's see if they find me in you, is what I heard. And then you told me this dream, and it was like it was just meant for me to know that everything was going to be okay. And it is. Yeah. Wow. My father's doing great.
Yeah. What a wonderful ending story to the podcast.
Perfect.
Thank you so much, Jaymee Carpenter.
Thanks, Raghu.
Oh, that's so great. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a manifestation of the truth of us. We're taken care of. We are really taken care of. Yes, it is good to have awareness of that taking care of-ness, however it manifests.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just absolutely rely on the beauty of that reality.
Well, that's my message. Love is the author.
Love is the author. Yeah, there you go.
It's the whole thing. It's my be here now, and that's what I live by.
Exactly. It's great. And check them out. Love is the author. Get it wherever you get your podcasts. I believe the people here doing the show notes will create a link so that you can check up on Jaymee and some of the wonderful guests that he has. And boy,
thanks, buddy.
Fun as it always is. We just sit around. We do the same thing whenever we get together.
Yeah,
it's
that's
just
the
real
thing.
satsang. It's phenomenal, and
man,
I'm happy to have you here.
Thanks, Raghu.
On Mindrolling. Everybody, thank you. This is Mindrolling. Go to BeHereNowNetwork.com.
Bye, everyone.
And tune in to everything that we offer there, from Jack Cornfield to Alan Watts and Homer. I will see you next week again. Thanks, Jim.
Okay, thanks.